United Nations calls for new multilateralism to address global challenges.
Nigerian Senate advocates improved welfare package for soldiers wounded in theater of operations.
Federal government to review school resumption date as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the dynamics of electricity tariff.
Now, it's certain that the provision of electricity supply all over the world usually attracts some fees depending on a number of factors, including the usage. Kingsley?
That's right, Jumai. And for consumers who have meters, the electricity cost is usually based on certain parameters, including location of the customer, tariff class of the customer, and rate, as well as the quality of energy consumed per kilowatt.
Although the tariff methodology varies according to climes, however, Nigeria was said to have determined its electricity tariffs initially based on a system of sculpting, with an emphasis placed on the achievement of closed reflective tariffs.
Well, this has changed over time, as there are indications that the electricity regulatory body, that's NEC, namely the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, has already shifted from the desire of having a strictly cost-reflective tariff method to a service-reflective one.
And with the takeoff of privatization of the private sector, the federal government issued a multi-year tariff order, MYTO, which spelled out the methodology for determining and reviewing tariffs based on assumptions on certain variables, including the inflation rates in Nigeria, exchange rate, gas prices, and available generation capacity to facilitate the transition and maintenance of cost-reflective tariffs.
Now, according to the arrangement, the multi-year tariff order is to undergo biannual minor reviews, biannual meaning that's twice a year, and major reviews every 5 years, and where necessary, tariffs are to be adjusted to reflect any changes in the underlying assumptions.
Now, in recent years, the electricity tariffs are being increased almost on a quarterly basis, and from 50% to, in some cases, 100% hike without recourse to economic situation of the country.
Well, there are very many pertinent questions that arise. For instance, what is the legal framework for the regulation of electricity tariff, whether to increase or to decrease, assuming there is any such provision? And what percentage, of course, is there provided for? Now, should the increase be effected when there are no commensurate services being offered to consumers? And how justifiable is it to raise electricity tariff at this point in time? Now, these are some of the talking points we're going to have in our conversation segment on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, as we discuss the dynamics of electricity tariff in Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the second edition of the program for the week.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Welcome, joining my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the NTA. Our complimentary segments will follow in due course. But first, let's take the highlights of the news with Joseph Johnson. Good morning, Joseph.
Jumai, good morning. Thanks for joining us. The United Nations has appealed for a new multilateralism to address global challenges. Secretary-General of the organization, Antonio Guterres, made the plea during a virtual speech for the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the first meeting of the UN General Assembly. The virtual event organized by the British government also focused on the need to reduce inequality and injustice.
Today, I see a growing momentum for change from grassroots activists, young people and civil society, and from businesses, cities, regions and governments in the United Nations General Assembly. In our interconnected world, we need a networked multilateralism so that global and regional organizations communicate and work together towards common goals.
Nigerian Senate will work towards improved welfare package in the ongoing law reform for wounded heroes who sustained lifetime injuries with a view to boosting the morale of fighting forces in the battlefront. Senate Committee on Defense gave the indication during an oversight to the 44 Army Reference Hospital, Kaduna.
Every day they take risk and they fight on our behalf. So whatever the country does to appreciate them cannot be too much.
There are some of them that end up having lifelong injuries. They have amputation. We realize that they cannot fight again, but they are soldiers. And many of them are in their prime, 23, 25, 26. So what we did is to start training them in various trades.
And the Nigeria Police Force says 2021 is the year of renewed strength and tactics in crime fighting. This assurance is coming from the force spokesperson, CP Frank Mba, as gang of criminals was paraded in Abuja.
No pay kidnapping. Yana da yawa. That he kidnapped severally. Akwai inda mun ka ansa miliyan 5, akwai inda mun ka ansa miliyan 7.
Bugabargu took Mohammed, kidnapped Mohammed, and held him hostage until he paid a sum of 1.550. Investigations have equally shown clearly that there is a strong link between this gang and a major terror group.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the federal government, in partnership with the private sector, would continue to support innovation and intervention to boost the growth of small businesses across the country. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo stated this at the first meeting of MSME stakeholders for the year 2021. Speaking about the implementation of the MSME's Survival Fund and the impact on the economy, the Vice President said the implementation of the Survival Fund by the federal government has sent the right signals that MSMEs are important component of the economy. Minister of State, Industry, Trade and Investment, Ambassador Mariam Katagum, said the implementation of the Survival Fund across different areas reduced the burden of the pandemic on businesses and that 300,000 business owners have benefited as at the end of year 2020. The third stream of National Youth Service Corps members will resume on 18th January 2021 with COVID-19 testing and protocols in place, but school resumption date may be reviewed by the Federal Ministry of Education as COVID-19 cases continue to rise in the country. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 stated this at Monday's briefing in Abuja.
Avoid crowding, as we see in people under the guise of national identity number enrollment. There is absolutely no cause for this. If only people would voluntarily comply.
There is no state in Nigeria that is immune to this pandemic, even if reports are not coming out of such states.
Meanwhile, 1,244 new cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed in Nigeria in the last 24 hours in 17 states and the FCT. In the new figures released by the NCDC, Lagos is still leading with 774 new infections, followed by the FCT with 125, then Plateau State with 102 cases. Others are 47 in Anambra, 46 in Ondo, 27 in Rivers, 18 in Edo, while Kaduna, Ogun, and Gombe states have 16 new cases each. Bauchi and Kanu have 11 cases each. Nasarawa 10, Akwa Ibom and Sokoto have 10 each. Borno 5, Ekiti 4, while Zamfara has 2. Nigeria now has 101,331 confirmed cases, out of which 80,491 were treated and discharged, while 1,361 deaths have been recorded. The Domestication of Trafficking in Persons Enforcement and Administration Act 2015 and Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 in all states of the Federation are critical. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, is therefore urging new Director General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTEP, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, to implement these acts.
Nigeria, as a source, transit, and destination country, will play its role to ensure that the hundreds of thousands of our citizens stranded and awaiting repatriations shall be evacuated and made to undergo counseling, rehabilitation, empowerment, reintegration back into society.
The federal government of Nigeria has and continues to provide support and commitment to the anti-human trafficking cause. Hence, it is my hope that you will build on previous successes.
And that concludes the morning news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after this break.
You're welcome back now to business. Capital market experts predict vibrant markets in 2021 following early passage of budget. Kunle Ade has details.
The passage of the 2020 appropriation by the National Assembly and its signing by President Muhammadu Buhari in December 2020 makes it the second consecutive year Nigeria will be operating a January-December budget cycle. A professor of capital market, Uche Uwaleke, said the development will compel local and foreign investors to put their stake in the economy. He said various programs of the federal government aimed at quick economic recovery will also serve as advantage.
Some positives that will also impact the stock market favorably. One of them is the commitment of the central bank to continue to support growth, support the market, at least in the first half of 2021. Another positive factor that will buoy the markets in 2021 happens to be the increasing confidence in the economy as a result of the early passage of the 2021 budget.
And to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see the details of Monday's trading, January 11, 2021. With business news, I'm Kunle Ade.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toby, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Jumai. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Jumai, let's begin with you all. Let me take the Punch,
Just
because
the
the Punch has a much busier window page. The Punch, let's start off from above the nameplate. It says, experts kick as federal government signs $1.96 billion Kano Maradi Rail Project MOU. Experts kick as federal government signs $1.96 billion Kano Maradi Rail Project MOU. That's on page 24 in greater detail. On page 7, there are plots to cause religious disturbances in Lagos, Kaduna, and others, and that's attributed to the DSS. 1,000 NDLEA cadets stranded as minister stops plateau orientation. That's also on page 7. On page 14, Okorocha canvasses new political alliance ahead 2023 polls. And there's an earpiece there beside the nameplate where you see the COVID-19 update focusing on Nigeria. Number of cases confirmed already in the country now, over 100,001. 80,000 have been discharged, and now we have 1,361 fatalities from coronavirus. Worldwide, over 1.9 million persons have died. And the lead story is also on coronavirus, says hospitals won't be able to handle serious COVID-19 cases soon. And that's according to the NCDC, with 3 riders. Federal government to extend curfew hours, meets with governors. We are reviewing January 18th school resumption date. That's according to the minister. And government plans to release rapid test kits in Abuja next week. The photograph on the front page there says, with the caption, suspected kidnappers and armed robbers operating along the Abuja, Kaduna, Abuja, Nasarawa, and Abuja, Lokoja highways during their parade by the police in Abuja on Monday. Parent says 113 children missing as Kano recovers 5. Taraba says IGR worrisome, raises panel on revenue. Benue girl sets lover's house on fire and boyfriend severely burnt. Borno lists 1,163 school enrollees parents for allowances. And friends suspect drug overdose as girl dies in Yobe Government Lodge. Adoke tested positive for COVID-19, head back in UAE. That's according to his counsel.
Yeah, and now let's go to the Daily Trust newspaper just below the masthead. We are deploying you all to Sambisa Forest, Brote tells new recruits. That's details on page 4. Discos install only 525,000 meters in 2 years. You can find details on page 19. Lagos Ibadan Rail COVID-19 sacks 70% of workers. That's on page 20. And then we now see the bold headlines there as Nigeria's COVID-19 cases hit 100,000 plus. We are running out of treatment facilities, federal government cries out. With riders, says health workers may be forced to take tough decisions. Mows another lockdown. Reviewing January 18 school resumption date and to release rapid test kits in Abuja. Just like Kingsley read in Borno, out-of-school children of IDPs gathered for enrollment into schools during Governor Babagana Zulum's 3-day humanitarian visit to Damasak, a former Boko Haram stronghold in the shores of Lake Chad in northern Borno yesterday. 28 insurgents killed as 6 soldiers die in Yobe ambush. You find details on page 4. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, we see 2023 Okorocha Mall's new political alliance. You find details on page 40. Federal government signs 744.4 billion pact for Kano Maradi rail line. Details on page 21. Buhari orders mourn as Kontagora dies at 65. You find details on page 6.
Well, let's start with the story on COVID-19. The Nigeria Tribune reports that Nigeria recorded 9,833 new cases in 7 days. This is an average of about 1,405 a day. On Sunday, we registered 1,024. Yesterday, 1,244. So the total nationally is that since March 23rd, 2020, we have now had 101,331 cases. The last case reported yesterday were found in 17 states, and this is how the pattern looks like. Lagos alone has 774 cases. Federal Capital Territory, 125. Plateau, 102. 10 other states have double digits, while 5 states just had single digits. Meanwhile, this day also reports that the federal government may suspend ongoing national identification number because of the turnout of persons in this area. This is the fear from COVID-19 in view of the large crowds that have always turned out. Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Kaduna may also be shut down due to COVID-19. The paper indicates that if passengers are found to be COVID-19 positive, they will leave no alternative than to shut it down. The National Center for Disease Control has highlighted the idea of launching rapid test kits anytime from now, in fact from next week. You will recall that Kogi State was the first to identify these rapid test kits. And at that point in time, Nigeria Center for Disease Control said they were not reliable because of their inability to determine the PCR level. I don't know whether we now have a modified version of the rapid test kit. And one must also not ignore Kogi State. No. Up to date, if you look at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control table, Kogi has a record of only 5 cases. Yes. In fact, Kogi State has disputed those 5 cases. What is Kogi State doing right that all of us are not doing? So there are lessons to be learned.
Is Kogi State cooperating with the NCDC for testing purposes?
Yes. Well, if they are not cooperating and they are not testing, COVID-19 is not something you can hide. By the time the casualties come, the figures will be there.
Yeah, and there have been casualties in Kogi. Whether they are attributable to coronavirus or otherwise is an open question. I mean, are you saying that in the past 9 months or more, there have been no deaths that could not probably be explained?
If the report by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control is anything to go by, and that is what I look at every now and then. As at yesterday, I saw 5 cases for Kogi.
I agree with you, but the NCDC has often complained that it is not receiving cooperation from some state governments, and probably top on that list is Kogi State, and we all know that. There was a time, if you recall, last year when officials of the NCDC had gone to Kogi, and the state government was threatening to quarantine the officials for 14 days before they even started their operations. And the officials had to return to Abuja. So what is the level of cooperation now between Kogi State government and the federal officials through the NCDC to ensure that there is regular testing going on? Or is Kogi State organizing its own testing? Well, there are all kinds of functions that they attend, public functions, and people are going about no social distancing, no masks, virtually nothing. And they are bragging that they are unique. But again, that's a matter for another day.
Yes, but I still think, with the social media now, if there are really cases like that, like other states in Kogi, I think people would have come out to talk about it and say somebody has died of COVID, but from everybody in the state is, is silent. So I think there's something they are doing right there. That sort of
presumably. But Juma, you say that people who utilize the social media to say, oh, such a person has died of COVID. For you to ascertain that somebody has died of COVID, the person must be tested. Yeah. Or the person must have been tested. When you don't do testing, how then do you conclude that the person passed on account of COVID? And then the other figure you read about Lagos, the spike in numbers in
774.
774.
That's yesterday.
The point is as follows. As you are reading those numbers, a great majority of persons in Lagos are recklessly careless as to what is happening around them, as you would also find in other major cities. Go to major bus stops in Lagos now and see what's happening. Go to major markets in Lagos and see what's happening. So it's just, I don't know, it's a big challenge. I do hope that we're able to scale the current wave of the coronavirus, and then we'll begin to ask ourselves questions as to why there seems to have been such public obstinacy to a grave public health issue. We are saying this, and people are just saying that, no, it
doesn't exist. It's a lie. It's not an African man disease.
Social media is doing a lot of damage. There's a lot of false information going on in social media, and people actually believe it. You won't believe it that from what I have seen, all the vaccine that have been administered so far, you can see them as liquid. But there is a campaign on the social media saying that when they come to inject you with vaccine, they are going to insert a chip in your body, and it is going to work with the 5G. And a lot of people
believe
alter
your
DNA.
Some call it 666. I don't know.
So, that's part of what we are saying. But when the vaccine comes, I'm sure that those of course, who are lined up to take it will take it, and they will get protection. Part of what you have also seen is the exaggeration of a few cases of adverse reaction.
Yes,
one or two persons react, and they, you see it circulated or forwarded many times. But there are millions of the vaccines that have been administered. Look at Israel. About 1/3 of the population of Israel has been covered in a very brief period. Just under a matter of weeks, they have deployed the vaccines.
About 2 million people have been vaccinated in the United States.
That's right.
But
So, and then what is the percentage of adverse reactions? I mean, let's also remind ourselves, there were certain kinds of vaccinations we took in the past, and some of us had adverse reactions. Yeah, you had a swelling, or you had prolonged itching, or you had prolonged fever, and so on and so forth. But after a while, it subsided. Yes.
It's like you can't run away from reactions. Like for me, when I have my MRI every 3 or 4 months, I react to the injections and everything. But I have to go back because I need to survive, to live. Yes. And they say the federal government is more on the lockdown.
Well, again, the alarm has been there since the Presidential Task Force has consistently emphasized. In fact, they identified FCT as having the highest test percentage, which is about over 3.something%. Lagos is also compliant. Apart from Lagos FCT, I think there's only one other state that has met that basic standard of about 1.5%. Many of them are far below. So if we are not testing enough and there is a second wave imminent, then it means there's a danger, particularly that there is a second variant, although there has not been any report of identifying the second variant in Nigeria, but it's already ravaging around the world. And that is why the alarm bell must begin to ring. In fact, the Minister of Education has now explained that the January 18th resumption day for universities is not sacrosanct, because it was only a target date, but with the increasing numbers now, they are now forced to go back and probably look at the situation again.
Bayo, yeah, well, thanks. Away from coronavirus, there's a story on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch. And it speaks, in my opinion, to a practice that is usually widespread amongst the services. And the headline is as follows. You might not be able to upload that on the screen. It says, community kicks as retired DIG, that's the retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, occupies DPO's lodge for 20 years. Now, the story is that the official lodge for the divisional police officer in the Ilupeju area of Lagos, that's an urban area, has been taken over by a retired DIG for the past 20 years. The DIG himself was a DPO at Ilupeju, and he was there for only a couple of months, and then he got transferred in 1999. He retained the accommodation after he was transferred in 1999, and ever since he has retired, he has continued to retain the accommodation so that the DPOs who are posted to Ilupeju do not have access to the accommodation. Now, it is even been said that the accommodation is being occupied by a lady at the moment. So this is part of what you find. Officers, yes, impunity is one, but it's also the case that officers often tend to have a base. Maybe you are based in Lagos for a number of years, or in Maiduguri for a number of years, and you get transferred. You don't want your family to be dislocated, and because of your seniority, you are privileged to retain your original accommodation while you get another accommodation. But for goodness sake, I mean,
even after retirement?
Even after retirement, why continue to hold on to it? And even after you have been elevated, so why continue to hold on to the accommodation of a DPO? And this is part of what we just find that is ongoing, and the Lagos State Commissioner of Police said they have tried to reach him. The AIG Zone 2 said they have tried to reach him. Just what is this? I mean, get a quick notice and then execute it on the property.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes. Well, the Department of State Services has raised alarm. There are threats about religious violence, and the target is all the 36 states of the Federation. Particularly, Dr. Peter Afunanya, the spokesman for DSS, said that the target states include Sokoto, Kano, Kaduna. The others are Rivers, Oyo, Lagos, and the Southeast. The plot is to cause, first, interreligious conflicts. Secondly, to raise alarm about intended attack on some worshippers, worship places, religious leaders, and also some other key vulnerable persons. The DSS said is working with the sister agencies to stem it, but they have, however, warned the members of the public to look out so that if you see anything, say something so that we can all protect ourselves from that impending danger.
Okay, Bayo, we're running out of time now.
I know you want to take the editorial.
Yes.
There's some curiosity that I've always had. And there seems now to have been some answer on account of the photograph that is on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Okay. That photograph shows the armed robbers and kidnappers who were paraded in Abuja. They had been operating around the Abuja, Kaduna highway, somewhere in Nasarawa, and also Abuja and Lokoja. Now, we also heard one of the stories on our bulletin, and this is the curiosity. Sometimes I always wondered, this was before the rise of kidnapping and so on and so forth. Say armed robbers. So armed robbers, say they snatch a vehicle or snatch some money, and while getting away, they run into another gang of robbers who do not know them. How do you resolve that?
Clash of the Titans.
Robber versus robber.
Yeah, but I have never heard of reports of that, of such a clash. But this report is saying, as we also had in our bulletin, that kidnappers themselves also do get to be kidnapped, and they pay ransom to be released.
Kidnappers had a fight between them in Kaduna recently. They killed each other.
That's but to say
fighting over the spoils of
no, that is fighting over the spoils of their kidnapping. That's to say that, look, a kidnapper himself walks into or gets to be kidnapped by other kidnappers, and you have to pay ransom to be released. It's a curious web of criminality that one has to.
There are no rules and order in the criminal world.
No, there are. By organized crime, there are rules.
We can't take the editorial now. We've run out of time. Thank you so much, Bayo, for coming this morning.
Thank you, too.
We'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation will begin.